The sound of that copper bulb is what I hear in nightmares. It's driving me insane. Hello everyone, welcome back to Minecraft. We're in the site of our brand new storage room here, which we built in the last episode. I am really pleased with how this is turning out aesthetically. Functionally, there's still some issues. I was just running some more experiments here, trying to debug this system and iron out all the issues of the missing items and so on. The redstone though is going to be a problem for Future 3, and right now I want to continue working on the aesthetics down there because honestly I'm just so inspired and there's so many ideas I still have that I want to get like down on paper, so to say. So I'm really in the mood to keep on building, so that's exactly what I'm going to do. But one of the thoughts I had was, what if we use some of the honey blocks? Nice, we got our advancement. Move a bee nest or beehive with 3 bees inside using silk touch. Is that a new advancement? I don't think I've ever seen that before. But then again, I've not played with the bees so much since they came out. I really need you guys to be back inside your nest because I really want to take you with me. Maybe this is a better idea at nighttime. I've spotted quite a few hives around here, so I'm going to go ahead and grab some of these. Perfect timing. There's 2, and I think we do get a tooltip now as for how many bees are inside, which is perfect. This one is full, 3 of 3. So that's 6 bees, we can breed them. So it's not absolutely essential we grab them all. But I don't want to leave anyone behind without a home. So let's start off with the idea of building a honey farm today, a bee farm. And it's not going to be like end game levels of generation for honey. We're not going to go for like 200 hives. It'll be more like 20 or 30 hives possibly. Just something to give us a trickle of honey, but we'll have to start with the collection of some bees. Okay, so I managed to get some bees from the surface. We're going to have to breed them up to get more. And I spotted this interesting piece of natural generation here, which to be honest I've not seen very often in this game, where the water level is on 2 different Y levels, almost right next to each other. It's almost as if it's asking to be a waterfall. So I'm really tempted to develop this area and develop the river banks, for lack of a better word. And maybe we put like some sort of footbridge over here to connect the 2 different sections. And then at the end here, it actually leads out into a nice little opening, which I thought would be suitable for the bee farm. Like around this little lake, right? Like, I don't know if you guys can see it, but I'm envisioning some sort of aesthetic bee farm, which follows the same sort of block palette we have down in the storage room, since, as I said, it's going to be connected one day. Once we develop the banks of the river, it's going to be an ongoing project, of course, but I want to get the bee farm done today. There is this area which I've been caving in quite a bit when I was gathering copper. If I remember right, there's even some spider spawners which we might want to use. Although I've much further north, there's actually a triple spider spawner. Oh, a trial chamber. I haven't even seen that before. There's actually a triple spider spawner much further north of spawn, which we may end up using. Yeah, this opening here, this clearing, is a bit too large, so I think I'm actually going to make my own area here next to the lake. And that way we can tailor it. It is going to be a lot of digging though, since I suspect this is all like solid terrain here. Let's use our cheaty free cam. Yeah, it's pretty much all solid. There's actually quite a bit of water underneath, which is not ideal. But I think for the most part we should be able to make this work and fit in a nice little aesthetic bee farm just to give us a little trickle of honey. Like I said, it's not going to be the end game system. I think the most efficient way to do bee farming is actually in the nether, since it's the day-night cycle is not a thing there, so the bees will constantly produce as if it's nighttime. Or sorry, as if it's daytime. Wait, did I say the nether? I meant the end. Not not the overworld, but we're going to put it next to the river there because I want it nice looking. So I started to clear away some of the terrain around the lake for the bee farm, and then I thought, you know what, we should really have a beacon for this. And I put it off last episode, but this time around I just committed to the idea. So it was into the nether to farm some wither skeletons. As you saw in episode 1, we got a wither skeleton skull, and that was from the very first wither skeleton I ever killed in the world. Unfortunately, I didn't get that lucky this time around. I was in the nether for quite a while farming. So it's arguable as to whether or not it was worthwhile to go for the beacon in the end. It might have just been faster just to mine out the space we need around the lake with efficiency 5 and no beacon. No! Ah, oh, dang it. I hope this stuff didn't burn. Oh, I was so close. I was in one of those basalt deltas, and yeah, those holes. Oh man. No. Ah. Now that we have the beacon though, we can repurpose it in the future for other projects, and especially now with all the ambition I now have for this spawn cave, I can see a future in where I'm going to be doing a lot of terrain clearing and a lot of terraforming underground, so a beacon should help us out massively. Yeah, so keep in mind here that everything is a massive work in progress, as is probably always going to be the case in this cave. But this is what we got so far for the B area, and I realized as soon as I started digging that we probably picked the worst side of the cave to build this in, because I didn't realize quite how much water was around. Like there's this pool here, and then right behind this wall here is all flooded, and it goes for ages. I didn't realize that this was so large and so... It's like so much water around here. So it didn't, like the shape of this didn't turn out in the way I first imagined. But honestly, I kind of like the way it turned out in the end. And as you can see, I think I'm on the right track here. There still needs a massive amount of detailing work and refinement in the area. But overall, I'm really happy with the direction this has taken so far. So yeah, as I said, I did try to keep the same sort of theme. We got our brown mushroom and packed mud floor, jungle planks. I implemented some bricks here, which I don't think we have down in the storage system. And I think they work well with this sort of color palette. It works well as this sort of border, and I think I want to maybe do bricks as like extending all the way down, and then maybe do like a fake riverbed. Maybe with some sand, or I don't know, maybe try and terraform it a little bit, but that's not for today, that's for later on. So yeah, I do like the brick retaining wall around here. We got some moss on the floor as like a border, and then I just tried to mix in a couple of extra blocks. This is yellow terracotta, which I think works well as an accent. But you know what else it could definitely use, and the whole reason we started this is some honey blocks. So right back here, I've started breeding up our bees. In fact, they're probably ready for another round of flowers. So we have some of the bee nests that we collected here. We can give them flowers to breed. So if you didn't know, there's basically two things we can get from the bees. We can get honeycomb, and we can get honey bottles. So the way that the bees work is during the day, they will pollinate a flower, as you can see right there. And I think, yeah, that texture on their back indicates they're carrying pollen, and they will carry that back to their nest. Then the nest can have a honey level of up to 5. No. Okay, here's me acting like I know what's going on here with the bees. I forgot about that. I completely forgot about that. We need to... I can't believe that just happened. I was in the zone there trying to explain what's going on with the bees. Okay, let's wire this in and then we'll transport them over. So, yeah, when the bees carry their pollen back to the nest, the honey level increases. When the honey level is level 5, that is the point where we want to harvest the honey bottles. So I think we can craft our first beehive here. And from what I understand, these are interchangeable with the bee nests. Like, you can use these to farm the bees, and this will act as if it's their nest. But I think you can also use the bee nest just as a different texture. So I want to have our bee nest right there. So this side here is going to be for the honey bottles, and this one is going to be for honeycombs. So what we want to do here is have some hoppers underneath the bee nests to collect the honey bottles in this case. And we want our dispenser right above the hive, so it's going to be behind this yellow terracotta up here. So it's a very simple setup here, a very common design. There's a couple of different ways that you can do this as well. there is a more expensive setup, which will probably eventually set up later on when we have way more hives, and we just do like a fun, massive, extremely efficient setup. But this one, I want it to look nice, so we're going to go the slightly more inefficient method. That one's the wrong way. That's the wrong way. That's the wrong way. Third time's a charm. I'm going to have to do this. So our beehive is right behind this block here, and we can read it with the comparator. The comparator will output a signal strength equal to the honey level of the hive. So when we're honey level 5, we get signal strength 5, and then it'll be 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And that should activate our dispensers up here and fill the honey bottle, which will then be dispensed into the block, which will be picked up by the hopper below. So I don't know how much sand we have. I think I was smelting some more in the furnaces. If we don't keep it full, then the honey bottle is going to end up in the dispenser. And then it's going to be stuck in there, right? So I think we had some... Yeah, we had some glass still smelting here. So additionally, as I mentioned earlier, we need to give the bees a flower block. And the easiest way to do that is with the flowering azalea leaves. This counts as a flower they can pollinate and take it back to their bee nest to give us the honey. We also want to make sure the bees can't escape anywhere, because that's going to make it hard for them to pathfind back to their nest and decrease our honey output overall, I believe. So we want to block up right in front of the hives here. I was thinking about some brown stained glass just to kind of blend in, and it's nice and easy to see through, so we can see we'll be able to see the bees leave their nest. And then maybe we'll do some light blue stained glass in the front. How does that look? Do we like that? I think I like that. I'm not sure about these middle portions. I think we can remove this and maybe do the glass in here instead. That also gives it some extra depth, and it doesn't look so flat on the front. Red would be not bad, although it does kind of draw your eye to here. And I kind of want the focus to be on the bees, although it goes nicely with the mangrove in the back. Let's try all the colors. Let's just try green here. Yeah, see, green kind of blends in with the leaves, which is not necessarily a bad thing here. And yellow sort of stands out, but we have yellow up the top here. And we might also add yellow behind the hoppers, because I believe that cyan terracotta back there can be removed. Yeah, behind these hoppers, we can also place some sort of extra decoration behind here. Maybe even another light source. Oh, I kind of like that red behind there. Maybe even another light source, but we have the glowstone right underneath the leaves, which give us enough light. And we also have some... I think there's some lighting above here as well. Yeah, we have some glowstone which shines through the yellow stained glass on the back. Yeah, I think I want to go for green on the bottom level, just to blend in with the leaves. And then we'll keep our brown stained glass and light blue here. And yeah, I think that's looking pretty nice so far. So later on, we can also come back here and implement a crafter system to craft the honey bottles into honey blocks. And in that way, when you do that recipe, you get your glass bottles back. But for right now, I'm just going to go from the barrels below the hopper into some hoppers into a double chest on the front. And I'll just craft them manually for the moment. Yeah, so that'll be our collection system. And I think that's all we really need for the basics of getting honey bottles. Are we chill now? You ain't mad at me anymore? I'm going to grab some of these hives. For some reason I thought you got more glass bottles than 3 per craft. So that's basically all the glass we have, and we've just filled a dispenser and a half. So I'm going to have to go gather some more sand. But we should be able to test it out with this. And like I said, we want to keep this full of glass bottles. Otherwise, the bottle won't be ejected when it's filled. And we need it to be ejected into the beehive block space to be picked up by the hopper. So I think we can try it out here. I might actually try the bee nest instead of the beehive, just as an aesthetic difference, like I mentioned. I can already tell this is going to go horribly wrong. This is going to go horribly wrong. Okay, wait. Place the nest, or break the hive, place the nest, glass, glass. Did it work? I heard the dispenser. Do we have a honey bottle? Yes, we have a honey bottle. Nice. All right. Do we prefer the... Oh, that does stand out quite a bit more than the beehive. I'm not sure if I like that. I think maybe I prefer the beehive, actually. To craft the rest of the beehives, though, we need more honeycomb. And so for the honeycomb automation, it can be simplified a little bit. Since we don't necessarily need to wait for honey level of 5, we can just use some observers observing the honeycomb, or the beehive in front here. And whenever the beehive changes state, i.e. increases the honey level, it will activate this observer, activating the... Wait, I think I have this backwards. Hold on. Yeah, it's beehive into observer down here into note block. And this is just a way to pass a block update up to this observer, which is facing down. And that points its redstone face up. And this observer here reads this observer's block update and powers the dispenser that way. So it's a bit more simple. Anytime the honey level increases, we will activate the shears, which should be up here. And it's going to activate even though we can't necessarily always harvest it because there isn't enough honey in the nest. But that's perfectly okay because if the shears don't activate and doesn't harvest anything, it doesn't decrease the durability. It only decreases on harvest. But we have plenty of iron here. We can also use a crafter later on to auto-craft shears for us. I think right now I'm just going to fill it manually. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. I love that they implemented this queue crafting. It's so good. I don't know which version implemented that, but it's so nice to have that now in vanilla. Yeah, unlike the balls, I don't believe we have to keep these completely full, but it doesn't cost us much to keep them full anyway. And for refilling these dispensers, we do have some hoppers above these trapdoors up here. So we could also run another hopper line above and then have some sort of centralized chest for the input for the iron. And same over this side for the glass bottles. We also have our hopper line up here, which is now, I just realized, inaccessible because of this redstone dust. So it'll probably have to come from the side and we'll replace this yellow glass. It should be possible though. It should still be possible. So you'll be pleased to know that I did fix our storage system here. I was at this for hours, honestly. I didn't think it would take that long to fix, but I'm like 99% sure everything has been addressed by now. And the wiring is pretty much completely different back here. Importantly, all the logic and the principles that we talked about last episode still apply. It's just that our method to achieving those goals, or the way that we're handling the storage here, is slightly different. So if you'll remember right, the two big issues that we were having was missing items, or not, like essentially not all the items were being properly sent into their correct destinations, and some of them were ending up in overflow, even if there was a space for them in our shulker boxes here. And the second issue had to do with the copper bulb, which used to sit right underneath here. Remember, this one was opposite this one. We talked about this last time, and it would result in whenever it would stop in the incorrect state, it would essentially lock the input. I have addressed that by adding a dropper instead of a hopper for the input limitation. Okay, so let's do one more sanity check here and make sure that this all works. So we're working with full boxes. I still have to go through and organize the layout for the boxes, but right now we're just working with a full box. So let's go ahead and take a couple stacks of cobblestone. We have a sand box here. Let's take 2 stacks of sand, for example. We'll take maybe 3 stacks of sandstone. And again, we leave one in the filter, or we leave one item left behind to set the filter here, so that only stone can be put in this slot. And again, we want nothing in overflow, so let's just make sure that is empty. It currently is. So let's toss these in the input while we test this once again, and I'll show you how all the redstone works behind here. So again, we have our safety feature, which is this button. Nothing is going to be pulled out until we hit the button. Okay, so as you can see, all the items make their way up the dropper, and then the dropper pushes them into the hopper, same as we had last episode, but now instead of a double chest, it goes into a dropper setup here. So now this is where it fundamentally changes, where so the clock is started down here. It used to sit right over there, but I've moved the clock here. The clock is exactly the same, the timings are exactly the same in the clock, and then it hits another repeater here, it goes to this redstone dust and up the glass tower. And the glass tower hits the observers, which update the powered rail, and then activate the copper bulbs in this pattern here, where they alternate. So all of that is exactly the same, and then we send an extra signal upwards via this glass tower, and that hits a comparator in subtract mode, which, as you can see, generates, I think it's 9 pulses. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. It's 8 pulses. Okay, it's 8 pulses to this dust. But we want to limit our input to 4 items. The reason it's 4 items is just so that we have, so that we don't skip over the shulker boxes. And that also matches the hopper speed and the timing of the clock. So that allows exactly 4 items here, as you can see. 1, 2, 3, 4. The items themselves are random because when you pulse a dropper, when we pulse this input dropper, it picks a random slot. And because this dropper tower here, which comes from the input chest, is faster than we send items in here, faster than the 4 pulses we give the dropper, it can pick a random slot here. So it's going to pick 4 of any of the inputs from the dropper to send into the first chest to be sorted. It pretty much just generates those 8 pulses because we are sending the signal around in circles, and this is in subtract mode. But then, because we want to send half the amount, right? So we get 8 signals from this, 8 pulses from this, and then we send it into some repeaters, which delay the signal enough to give us 4, albeit uneven dropper pulses. Maybe I can show you here, actually. If we break this hopper, it shouldn't break anything. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. So it's kind of like an awkward timing, but it still works out all right. And I don't want to lose any of those items because I do want those full shulker boxes. So let's try and put this back. Ah, fell down. I've done that so many times. It was so difficult to build this in survival. Like, compared to building in creative, building in survival is, yeah, when you're doing vertical stuff, is not easy. But man, I'm so looking forward to the Happy Ghast next patch. That's going to be so fun. I wonder if it's viable for redstone stuff or if it's maybe too big. But yeah, so back to the redstone here. After we send our items in, 4 at a time through the droppers, then everything else remains the same in terms of the clock timings. However, we do have some extra redstone here for the on signal and also the off signal. So for the on signal, we want to not have this thing running all the time, right? So we want to send a signal whenever there is stuff in the input. So we used to measure a hopper up here. Because it's now been changed to a dropper, we now measure the dropper. So if there's anything in the dropper, it sends a signal to this comparator, hits the observer, which updates and gives us a short pulse. And then we have what is known as a pulse extender here. This is probably easier for us to understand in a redstone test world here. So a pulse extender is a way for us to extend the length of time that the output signal stays on. So this is going to be a 5-tick delay between the input and receiving a signal, and then it will stay on depending on how many items we give this hopper. So in this example, we have 64 items. This lamp here represents our output signal, and this in the main world is connected down to our clock. This side here represents the dropper that we send 4 pulses into to limit the input. So whenever there's items waiting to be sorted, we pulse this observer, pulse in this dropper, which has a single item in, and this begins the pulse extension. So when we pulse the dropper, it's a 5-tick delay, and then we get our output signal, and then it will stay on for as long a time as it takes for items to flow between these hoppers. So what's going to happen here is when we send a signal to the dispenser, it passes to the dropper, it passes a single item into this hopper, which will then depower this comparator, depower this repeater, depower this block, unlocking this middle hopper, and the items begin to shuffle into the hopper next to it. It also inverts this torch, which keeps this hopper locked, and we get our output signal here, right, because there's items in this hopper. As soon as this one fills with 64, this turns off momentarily, you just saw it, which unlocks this hopper and passes the single item back into the dropper, which then powers the comparator again, powers the repeater, and inverts the state of the hopper locking. So the items will then shuffle back into the middle item. Once all 64 items make their way in here, the output turns off, and yeah, we're ready to receive another input signal here. I hope that was understandable enough. This was taken from the Minecraft wiki, which is a great resource for redstone logic circuits like this one. So back in the world here, the pulse extender sends its signal down, and then inverts this torch as we saw and starts the clock here, which starts our copper bulbs. Now, the next part of the system is the dropper tower, which is unchanged, and this will run self-sufficiently. So as long as there's stuff in the droppers here, it will send a signal, and then, yeah, invert all the torches and send our items upwards through the droppers, and then keeps them going in a big loop. So as you can see here, the items are in pretty much all of the droppers, since they have to make their way to the very end slot, the very end slice of our storage system. Which is one of the things I wanted to test here in a variety of different locations for shulker boxes. So we'll see if this works. But yeah, there should be items in pretty much all of these. However, I diagnosed that one of the problems of us ending up with items in overflow when they weren't supposed to is because of the comparators here blinking. So if you'll remember right, we also read a signal from these droppers. So whenever there is anything in any of the droppers, we send a signal through this redstone dust, and this is our way to keep the whole thing on, despite the fact that there's nothing in the input, right? So by this point, you can hear the dropper up there, which is one of the downsides of adding a dropper up there. Whenever there's nothing in the dropper, that doesn't necessarily mean that all the items have been sorted, right? Because it does take some time for them to reach their proper storage destination, which is the current state of the system right now. And to do that, the first method is from the pulse extender. So we're still getting a signal here, which is inverting the torch. But we also want to, once the pulse extender runs out, we also need to send another signal to say, hey, there's still items in the dropper here waiting to be sorted. So also keep the clock running here. So to do that, we have another identical pulse extender right here. And we're reading from this block, because the redstone dust here is omnidirectional, or sorry, bidirectional, right? It doesn't necessarily just flow in this direction. So we can read this, as long as this is powered, we can grab a signal through the block here and power the dropper. And this is the one with a single item in. And the reason that a pulse extender here was necessary, I used to just have this directly connected to the clock to invert the torch. However, as you can see here, once we reach the, near enough the end of all the items sorting, occasionally it does blink, this redstone dust. It will turn off momentarily and then turn on again. And that was sending erroneous signals to the copper bulbs, because it would basically misalign with the clock timings here. So if this redstone torch was depowered and then we send a line directly from there, you saw that just blinked there. If we send another pulse into here when the pulse was around this block, then it could double pulse the copper bulbs, and that would also mess with the precise timings that we have for the input, and that would also result in items being sent to overflow when we don't want them to be. So it would result in false rejects from the hoppers, right? So we need a way to delay the signal from here, but also keep the clock running in a consistent timing. We need this specific timing here with the 4 repeaters and then +1 plus the redstone torch. So that's why we have this pulse extender. And this also doubles up in its functionality and allows the whole thing to stay on, even if there's nothing in the dropper, right? Because occasionally there would also be some items left over in this hopper, as we saw last episode. Right, like the whole thing would turn off and there would be like 4 items stuck in this hopper that were supposed to go down to here. Wait, is it all sorted by now? It's worked. It worked. It worked. Oh my goodness, it's all sorted. And now it just turned off. Oh, perfect. Yes, 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 yes. That's exactly what we want. So yeah, it keeps it on because of the pulse extenders. The whole thing stays on long enough to sort all the items through one slice. It might be a little bit over. I might have to adjust the timings on the pulse extender. So again, we have a full stack of items in the top one. And then in this bottom one, I've went for a little bit more headroom. And I have, I think, 2 stacks of items here. Like I said though, I have run several tests in this configuration and it hasn't failed me just yet. So I think it's going to be okay. I'm going to leave it alone as it is until we discover maybe more bugs. Fingers crossed though. Fingers crossed that doesn't happen, rather. I need some cobblestone. I don't think I have any cobblestone here. So what I want to do now is also implement a shulker unloader. So right now we can't send full shulkers full of items into the input chest. It has to be offloaded manually by the player first of all. So we want to have a shulker unloader before it hits the input dropper up there. There should be plenty of cobblestone at our cobblestone farm, although we might be running out by now. Aha, I'll just grab this one. Why not? So truthfully, I've never built a shulker unloader, so I went ahead and grabbed a schematic, which I got from the Storage Tech Discord. So we're going to find out how this works here together. Where's my cobblestone? Let's make some dispensers. I think we only need one. Okay, this has proven a little more complex than I originally anticipated. And remember last episode when I said it was relatively simple, this storage system? Well, I'm kind of eating those words right now. But yeah, I've removed our dropper tower, which sends the items up to the input. Since we need a way to determine if an item is a shulker box or not, because if it is, it needs to hit our shulker box unloader, and if it's not, it needs to bypass it and go straight into the input of the sorting system. So I found out there is a way to do it, and we can abuse the fact that you cannot put shulker boxes inside shulker boxes, right? So you can't nest the storage. But what we can do is make use of that mechanic, and if we have a dropper somewhere that every single item in the sorting system passes over from input chest, then we can send that into a shulker box. And then in this way, any shulker boxes which are filled with items which need to hit our unloader will pass through the dropper, and the dropper cannot put it into the shulker box, right, no matter what, which means that we can take it from into a hopper line and send this one into our shulker unloader. And then anything that is like quote unquote loose items will be allowed to pass into the shulker box, right? Let's just put in all four there so we can see. Yeah, so all four glass made it in here, and the shulker ended up here. So we can have two hopper lines. This one here hits the unloader, and this one here goes straight into input. Trying to wire all that in though is not going to be so easy. I did try multiple times and had to rip it all out. And sure, there is lots of wire optimization, which is absolutely possible here. But you know what? I'm just going to roll with it and do the best I can, and then potentially later in the series we can look back and we can admire all the dire wire that we've set up here, all the spaghetti, and be like, 3, what are you doing? So yeah, we have to start somewhere. We're only on episode 4 here. I was looking at that storage system for so long, I just had to step away for a minute, and but I'll show you what's going on over there in just a moment. But here we have a refill system, or what I hope is going to be a refill system. I haven't fully tested it yet because we don't have all of the glass. I still have to go and mine some sand for glass in the desert, which I'm just about to go and do here. But yeah, you remember how I said that we couldn't have the hoppers into the dispensers from the backside, like we do over on the Honeycomb side, like here? This one still needs a hopper minecart above, but I'm still trying to decide where I want the input chest for the shears. And we'll have to set up the crafter as well, so that's another thing, but there's plenty of space behind this contraption here for a crafter system. And same on this side, we do also have plenty of space for the crafter, but on this side it's slightly different. I ended up putting some hoppers into the side of the dispensers here. So this hopper line feeds into the side of that dispenser, and it's the same for all of them. That does sort of mess up our aesthetic here in the front, but I didn't want to sacrifice this sandstone wall above to put the hoppers from above, so I really wanted them hidden, or more hidden than the top, because I really think it's quite important that we see this sandstone wall behind it. I really wanted to maintain that, so I don't know, we're going to have to maybe remove this glass somehow. But yeah, essentially the hoppers just feed into the side. This does also increase our the amount of glass bottles we have to buffer, but it's the price you pay for nice aesthetics, so I'm willing to pay that price. I'm willing to spend a few more hours gathering sand to fill all this with glass bottles, and then yeah, once we have the crafter, we can recycle them automatically, which shouldn't be too difficult to implement down here. But then yeah, we're just taking an observer line from this redstone dust. When the beehive reaches a signal strength of 2, it will pulse the observer, and that just goes into some repeaters to to extend the pulse, and then over the powered rail, which should send the hopper minecart over and fill all the hoppers above here. That is the theory, at least. I'm not sure how well it's going to work in practice. I don't know if the minecart is going to be too fast. I don't know if it's going to get stuck halfway. Like, yeah, I still have to do a little bit more testing on this. Maybe there's an easier way to do this, to be honest. Maybe it's just easier having a buffer chest here and then having separate crafters, and maybe trying to distribute the items that way. I don't know, but let's end on a high note here, and I'll show you the Shulker unloader, which is finally implemented. Like I said, so yeah, the redstone ended up a little bit more bulky, but I managed to make a couple of optimizations down here, actually. Yeah, it's pretty much all exactly the same down here. I just had to move a piece of redstone dust to not interfere with this dropper tower. So I believe the repeater used to sit right around here, and the glass tower used to go up to this block. I just moved it slightly, but all the function down here is exactly the same. So from the input chest, we are taking our hopper line into our dropper tower here. And this is all the same. Whenever there's something in the dropper, it activates all the observers all the way up. And then once we get to the top of the dropper tower, we have our shulker, I don't know what you would call it, a shulker pre-sorter, a selector, so that when the top dropper here is activated, we also grab an observer pulse from this observer, the top observer, from the dropper tower, and then that hits this observer, which is pointing into another dropper, and this is the one that feeds into the shulker box. So any loose items go into this hopper chain and feed into our input here. This is the dropper that we pulse 4 times, and then anything that is not, or sorry, anything that is a shulker box is not able to go in the shulker, and that goes down here and then into our shulker unloader. Yeah, let's take almost 9 stacks out of the sorting system, out of the shulker storage, and we'll drop it in this shulker box. And this box we should be able to toss into input. And what should happen is the shulker box should be sorted. It should hit the shulker unloader, be unloaded. The empty shulker should then be returned to us in this chest. The stone should then enter the sorting system. The sorting system should automatically turn itself on, sort the stone into this box, automatically shut itself off, and we should be left with nothing in the overflow chest. I can't believe how long it took to get to this point, but let's not speak too soon. Let's put this in input and see what happens here. Hit the button, and fingers crossed. We should see the shulker get placed here any second. There it goes. And then it's offloaded by this hopper into the hopper chain. Yes, the sorting system has turned itself on. Our clock is on. Oh, this is a good start already. This is a good start. Good start, and we should see our items in here. Yes, we do, 4 at a time. By the way, if you saw some note blocks earlier on down here at the redstone, I was experimenting with some... I did end up removing them, but I was experimenting with some way to let the player know that the system is on. It's not so easy to tell if the system is on or not, and especially when all these slots are filled with shulker boxes, we're not going to see the lamps back there. So I was thinking we could maybe have some sort of audio cue, like some sort of note blocks playing, some sort of jingle maybe, I don't know, or maybe some sort of lamps up here somewhere. I don't know, I'll have to think about that a little more. Did we get our empty shulker back yet? No, we didn't. It's probably still, yeah, it's not empty yet. Once it does finally empty out into the input, this piston should break it into the glass tower, and it should be collected by this hopper and put into the secondary chest here. Okay, a few minutes later here, I can hear the dropper, which means that we've probably... Oh, it's finished already. Yeah, we've sorted all the stone. The system is still on. Do we have our empty shulker? We do! Oh my goodness, yes we do. And it just turned itself off. That was perfect timing. Oh my goodness, it's perfect. It works flawlessly. And nothing in input, or sorry, nothing in overflow, right? I now know of the existence of several storage systems like that that accomplish the same thing. And I could have technically gone and looked up the redstone, but I really wanted to make this my own. And that's exactly what I've done here. So I'm gonna take the win and I'm I'm happy that I managed to finally get this all to work. Next episode, we're going to look at the bulk storage system, which is going to be built through here. It's going to be another large build, similar to this one, so lots more building to do. And some more crafting. I think we're almost out of redstone stuff, and I've been neglecting the villagers, honestly, for the last few days. So I'll have to trade more redstone and probably gather some more nether quartz as well. I think we're almost out of that. So yeah, for now though, we're going to wrap up the episode. I'm going to go shovel sand and fill this honey farm full of honey bottles, and maybe do some more building around here, because I really want to do some more building. After all, that is the whole reason that we started this endeavor in the first place of the honey farm. And I really wanted to just, honestly, just try some honeycomb blocks up here instead of the gold. And I don't know if this is actually worthwhile or not. I just I just wanted to try it, okay? Okay, how does that look? Is that an improvement over the gold? I don't know. I don't know, honestly. I'm not sure if it's better necessarily than the gold though. But yeah, I'll keep trying some stuff out. For now, thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you all in the next episode on 3 Plays Minecraft.